First of all, congratulations on the newest album. Within the Ruins is doing an amazing job with their album selection and music wise, it is strong. What was it like creating this new album?
Thank you. It was fun. Took a long time. We did it ourselves. In my studio, so I engineered pretty much all of it. But yeah, it was really fun. We didn't really get the whole idea of doing Phenomena 2 until we were maybe like halfway into writing the music stuff. But yeah, once we figured out what we were doing, we had a great time. Our vocalist Steve did a great job with the theme of the whole album and all of his lyrics and stuff. He came prepared, so that made tracking and recording fun. And yeah, we felt really good about it. It was a really fun album to do.
What is the writing process like when you have a studio at home? Well, is it more of a daunting task, or like do you guys get carried away being in the studio for too long, or is it a plus or is it a con to have a studio all to yourselves?
It's definitely a plus. Like for me, like the way that I work, I mean, the studio is actually in the same building as my business, so if I'm at work, I can run over and you know, do whatever. But no, I think it's a plus because we're involved with everything the whole time, so we have complete control over everything, and there's not really like any pressure to write. I guess in a way it makes it take a bit longer because you can kind of in a way almost procrastinate, but not really. It's almost like you can just wait till you're inspired and wait till you're ready to write and then go over and write rather than having to come off tour, write an album in a month or two, and then go to a studio and record it. So, yeah, it's great because we can work on our own time. It took 3 years, like I said, because I started writing and tracking myself. Most of the stuff that I did ended up being on the album. And then Steve would fly here to do vocals on like one or two songs at a time over the course of 2 years. The vocal tracking took, I think. So it was nice that it was just ongoing and we could always we could listen to stuff, we could get sick of stuff, we could really analyze stuff, we could go back and change things the whole time, which doesn't normally happen when you go to a studio for a month or two.
Awesome. We were talking a little bit about making the album and whether having your own studio all to yourselves was a plus or a con for you guys. What is your take on that?
Oh, I'd say it's a plus. I'm sure I'm going to say the same thing Joe probably did, but um, it's I when I was younger and first doing getting signed and stuff, you would do like the go to the studio for like a month, 4 weeks or whatever, and then you pump out a product, and it is what it is. But it kind of works out in our favor, going in for like a week at a time, doing a couple songs, and then sitting on them. We're all busy, so it helps keep us on track with our regular life stuff too. So, but then I think overall, even though it probably takes us longer to get a an album out, it gives everybody a product that we think is better. So, um, I just very advantageous, I would say, to have the studio. Not to mention it's attached to a brewery, which isn't the worst thing.
Uh, for you guys as a band, how's the collaboration process? Does one person take the reins and write everything, or is it a shared thing that both of you or the entire band gets to get an input in?
Uh, on this one, it was maybe a little bit different because we didn't have Paulo doing any melodic singing parts, so he wasn't here as often as the previous album. But yeah, I think it's been other than that, I generally write demos, write the guitar, program some drums, and then I'll send them over to the guys. They check them out, and then when it comes time to actually track and all that stuff, I think it was pretty creative. Me and Steve's part. I mean, we were kind of riffing off each other when we were tracking vocals and stuff. Like, I don't ever know what Steve's really going to come with. He'll send me some scribbled stuff that he writes down after a bottle of whiskey, and then
Yeah. Yeah. I got a
but
process.
yeah, but he comes in pretty damn prepared. So, but like I said, we don't know exactly what we're doing until we get into it. And a lot of the times he has his parts set and we nail it, or we'll have time to kind of fool around. I'll maybe have a few suggestions. Half the time stuff works. Yeah, it's pretty involved. Like this one was a lot of me and Steve in the studio together. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's nice that it's also kind of it is pretty secluded, so it's not really a space that like a lot of people have access to. So once we're in there working, it's me and Joe, or it's me, Joe, and Paolo, and then drummer will pop in sometimes too to kind of hang out for a little bit. But it's not it's not really, well, I say this, but it's not really like a party area per se until the end of the night when we're done with everything. But it's nice because it lets us hunker down and really dive into specifics on every aspect of what we're doing. So uh, it's nice that it's really just like a couple of us working on it at a time. And like Joe said, on this album, it was really just me and him pretty much the whole time because Paolo didn't do any singing stuff. So um, it's cool. I kind of like that. It's really just it's not too many cooks in the kitchen. It works well for us, I think.
One of the things about this album is that it is really a really hard album. It's really, really powerful. How do you guys get to that point? Like, do you guys just all you guys say you guys don't know what you have until you're actually tracking it, but are you guys planning out how hard these instrumentals are going to be, how rough these vocals get?
yeah. I'll go real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Well, you don't like you don't really know until you start the process. Like I think after I wrote like maybe three or four songs, I would talk with Steve. He'd come up with some ideas. We'd have an idea of what we were gonna attempt to do, but I mean the reason it came out the way it did is because we were just really into it. We love what we're doing, and it's very important to us. So if you put the work in, you're gonna get something out of it. But like, yeah, you don't until it's all done. Like once the record was mixed, turned in, done, and sat and you sit on it, and then you kind of think about like you listen back and you're like, holy shit, you can't even remember tracking half the stuff. It was a long process, but um yeah. I mean, when you're in it, it's a little bit different. I mean, we knew we were excited and it was going well and we were just super pumped. So um I even when I listen to it now, some of the stuff I'm like um kind of reconnecting with some of the stuff because it was such a long process, but super happy with it.
Yeah, and then I think it's kind of how like the vocals turned out specifically. I kind of have like an idea, I have like a vision for that in my head usually. Especially when I'm putting certain lyrics or patterns over sections that Joe writes. But with this album, because it's around villains and superheroes and stuff, like there's a certain level of uh grandiose to it, I guess. Not to sound too uh big about it. But there's just something about the storylines that these characters go through and their origin stories that like really puts it on a different scale. And so that I think just the lyrics and the stories of these characters alone kind of helps with that. And then we also kind of had this like different approach where we tried not to overcorrect or be overly perfect on this album. So some of the stuff just sounds a little bit more raw and real. Like there were plenty of times where I'd probably listen to it in the moment and prefer to have another take, but we would just move on. And then uh, we kind of kept this one a little bit more grounded in a way, which also works with what I was writing in a sense, which I can explain a little bit later. But um, so everything sounding kind of raw and aggressive was kind of turned into being intentional. I don't know if it was really our thought process at the very beginning, but kind of turned into that. So everything sounding so real and big and raw is kind of what we ended up wanting to do on multiple aspects of the songs.
Definitely. And for me, the song which stuck out to me the most is the last one. I don't know why, but that
Mm.
caught my attention. For you guys, what songs off of this album are you most proud of? That, that kind of stuck out to you in the creating process?
Ooh.
Mm.
Well, it should be the singles because that's why we picked them.
Yeah.
It was hard to pick singles. Even now, I'm like, we should have picked this one or this one. I mean, I think we love all the songs equally, but I've been listening to Chaos Reigns track 7 lately when I throw the album on. Um, it's an interesting song, and it's like kind of two. Think I remember Steve describing it as like it's like two fucking songs put together, man, because like the whole last half of the song almost is um the breakdowny type of like chuggy groovy part that doesn't really go with the whole beginning of the song. But it's like that song to me is just like a whole like journey. And then the lyrics that tie everything together at the end of that song, there's some stuff that tie into Gods Amongst Men on the original Phenomena. That we at first I was like, we should put this out first for sure. But then Steve was like, let's kind of leave it as like a little thing for people to discover. So, but that's one of my favorite songs right now.
Yeah, I'd probably say that one. That one is because I ended up really liking that last section, how those lyrics tie into Gods Amongst Men. So I wrestle with picking that one, or I do like Daywalker, but I think the answer I've been giving is Corruption because I think that was the first one I wrote fully, and it has I pulled from I pulled from multiple aspects on all of these songs, but that one specifically, I had a couple lines that I really liked that that I used. Um, and I think it's just one of those. It's tough to choose between your babies, but that was my firstborn, so I think I'm gonna I think I'm gonna go with that one.
Nice way of putting it.
That's all.
Yeah.
You named the songs that I had trouble picking between Daywalker, Corruption, and the last song, but for some reason the last song just stuck out to me. What is the story behind the last song?
Well, it kind of starts off on from Blackheart, where I specifically asked Joe to write a song because I was going to write lyrics for a buddy of mine that took his own life a while back. So I wanted him to write something, kind of a little different and kind of special specifically for that. And that's what turned into Reckless. And it was this cool, slower, but still heavy, but meaningful song. And it got a really good response from everybody. And we were like, well, we got to do at least one of those again. That turned out really cool. And so he did. And then I couldn't decide on most of the songs for a little bit where who I wanted to pick for each one. But then eventually I was like, no, the song that's the most different needs to be the song about the character that's probably the most powerful. I mean, there's a debate there, I'm sure, for super nerds, but I chose Superman for the Last Sun, and that one, with all the other songs too, I tried to keep a level of groundedness to each character, and kind of humanize their stories and what they go through. And so that one, essentially, if you really break it down, I'm not going for any of the sunshine and rainbows of, you know, leap a tall building in a single bound type stuff. I'm going for he's an alien from a different planet, and it's not his home. He doesn't have his family. He's alone, and he has to kind of make his own way. And he does obviously eventually get his like Earth parents, and he makes some friends eventually. But he's really secluded in a lot of ways, and um, it was very much like people reject him, but some people love him, and ultimately the planet does kind of need him, but people don't want to admit that. So it's just kind of him struggling with really being alone in a completely different world and doing his best to save people that don't want him there. So I tried to humanize his story as and then make a lot of the stories relatable, at least in some aspects. There are obviously clearly levels of superpowers and stuff on a lot of them, but his was fun too because it was just a very like, man, I'm somewhere where I don't belong and I'm getting spit on and yelled at, and some people are cool with this, but should I really even be here? And I just thought that was really interesting, and I thought that he was a really good character to choose for that song that Joe wrote.
And going from that, Phenomenon One was such a great, wonderful full album. What was the thought process of creating the sequel to it?
Hmm. Let's see. I think that's come up in every interview I've done, and probably for Steve too.
Yeah, yeah, mostly.
Yeah, that question. Yeah, I think it was basically Steve's idea at one point. We do the same thing. I usually write two, three, four songs, kind of see where I am writing wise, and send it to the guys and see what they think. And then as Steve gets material to hear, usually, well, it's only been a few albums, but I'll be like, okay, what are we thinking? How do you feel about the material? What do you feel like you're gonna talk about? Um, and so we were just shooting the shit like in our group text, and then it wasn't really going anywhere yet. I think it just didn't wasn't time. But Steve threw it out as an
Yeah,
idea. He's like, we could always do Phenomena too. And I think we kind of well, like laughed, maybe shot him down a little bit, and then moved on. But
I
I'll
was
be
only
honest,
half serious, I think, at the time too, so I didn't
yeah, but
really
it,
know.
it did kind of stick with me. It was like, okay, let's keep going and see what happens. But then I kind of started listening to Phenomena. I kind of wrote I think I wrote Demon Killer with that in mind, kind of a phenomena-ish writing style. And then I felt pretty good about it. It just felt like it was right musically, and like it was pretty nostalgic, and I just got really excited about the idea, and then we went back to it, and then um yeah, I don't know. From there, it kind of all came together as we wrote and tracked vocals, and as Steve wrote, we did it all over the course of like a year and a half probably. I was writing, he was coming here to track, he was writing, and we were just going back and forth. So it all actually like really came together how it was supposed to, rather than just like I have a bunch of songs, we should call it this and put this shit over it. Like it wasn't like that at all. So yeah, I think that's basically how it came about.
Yeah, I
Or
think it when you look back at like as a big picture, I think it was kind of a pretty natural process. Like I threw out a half-assed idea, then Joe started writing, then I was like, wait, hold on, and then Joe was like, yeah, hold on, and then and then just we were like, yeah, let's do it. So kind of like a domino effect is what I've been calling it.
That is awesome. Well, it's a great evolution to what Phenomenal One was. This is a fantastic album. Congratulations on it once again.
Thank you, man.